Vietnam's new corporate income tax law 2025, effective from October the 1st, marks a turning point. Now, for decades, tax breaks tied to industrial parks or IPs were a magnet for manufacturers. But from now on, incentives will no longer depend on where a project is located, but rather on what value it creates. High-tech, green innovation, and next-generation industries will be the real winners. Now, in this week's Bizline, we ask, how will this legislation reshape Vietnam's industrial landscapes, and what will it mean for investors, manufacturers, and even policymakers?
On October 1st, 2025, Vietnam's new corporate income tax law will officially take effect, marking a major turning point in the country's fiscal policy. Instead of broad-based incentives, the law now shifts towards targeted policies, focusing on high technology, innovation, and green growth. Small and medium-sized enterprises will benefit from preferential tax rates of 15 to 17%, while the standard rate for large enterprises will remain at 20%.
Yeah, I think the targets are definitely on par. I think there's definitely things that need to be, more focused on than others. But absolutely, I think if it's achievable, and I think it is, it'll definitely be on par.
With the Corporate Income Tax 2025, Vietnam signals a clear direction, moving beyond low-cost advantages to position itself as a destination for high-quality FDI powered by technology, innovation, and sustainable development.
Now, with Vietnam now rolling out groundbreaking tax incentives aimed at attracting and fostering high-tech, green innovation and next-generation industries, here in the studio with me is Mr. Tuấn Bùi, tax partner at Deloitte Vietnam. And connecting with me in the studio is Mr. John Campbell from Savos Ho Chi Minh City's Director of Industrial Services. Now, thank you, you both so much for coming over to our studio today. And so our first question is to you, Mr. Tuấn Bùi. The new corporate income tax law, which is expected to come into effect October the 1st, removes the traditional location-based tax incentives for industrial parks or IPs and shifts towards innovation, high-tech, and sustainable sectors. Now, could you explain the rationale behind this major change in policy?
Well, yes. In the past, the location-based incentive was used to attract the investment, but now it's no longer existing. And even with the changes of the restructuring of the governments and the administration system, now even the locations of previous provinces or city, they are merging together and create new location anyway. In general, we can see that now the government is looking forward to attract more real investment, or we can say that is substantiate investment into Vietnam to create more value, not only for the country but also to help developing the innovation of the country as a whole.
Right. So it can really be seen that, with this drastic change, it's actually quite comprehensive with a lot of the drastic changes that are happening in Vietnam right now. And this is just part of the bigger changes.
Yeah.
Right. And so for many years now, preferential tax policies were one of the key drivers that attract foreign investors, manufacturers to Vietnam's industrial parks. Without automatic incentive like before, how do you see the competitiveness of industrial parks evolving?
Yeah, well, the development of industrial park in Vietnam has been booming quite a lot in last decades. Yeah, and but now the industrial park, they are not competing because of the location-based incentive. Right. They're competing each other or with other investment attracting location by the way that they are providing service. In terms of the well-established infrastructure, the connectivity, connectivity with the logistics system, with the road transportations and other services, power supplies, wastewater treatment system, things like that, and because there are more and more requirements of the green-based products that require the manufacturer have to follow in order to export their product to the high demand country like in European countries or America. So they are looking into the industrial park with the very well established infrastructure rather than the incentive location.
Yeah, look, you're absolutely right. A lot of my clients in the past, the corporate income tax incentive for manufacturers was one of the key drivers for them in their decision in Vietnam. But it wasn't the only decision. There's a lot of other factors that are very important. So this means that industrial parks themselves are no longer the only selling point. Instead, competitiveness will come from infrastructure quality, logistics connectivity, and ecosystem depth. Key regions like Dong Nai, Bin Dung, Bac Ninh, Haiphong, they still offer unmatched access to ports, airports, skilled labor. They still have a lot of drivers for decision makers.
The Corporate Income Tax Law 2025 introduces transformative changes. Yet alongside new opportunities, many challenges await businesses during implementation. For some companies, failing to meet precise requirements regarding business sectors, geographic areas, or high-tech certification, or failing to clearly separate taxable income under preferential schemes from regular income, may result in tax arrears and the loss of incentives.
I think the main challenge or the main factor to consider is that many incentives require formal certification. So, for example, a high-tech enterprise, what does that mean? And then also, if it's related to software production or a high-tech solution provider, or maybe it's a semiconductor company. So adhering to these specific circulars or decrees still needs to be clarified more. And also, projects often need accounting separation or documentation for R&D costs precisely, right? So proper invoicing, proper auditing is very important, because some mistakes on the company side may lead to disqualification, which is definitely not good.
Previously, income from new technology products was exempt from corporate income tax for up to 5 years. Under the new law, this period has been reduced to 3 years. For technology projects, the initial stage often requires large capital while revenues are low or unstable. A shorter tax exemption period creates stronger pressure for early payback, potentially limiting breakthrough investments.
Bản thân như công ty chúng tôi trong lĩnh vực công nghệ thông tin cũng đang được nhận được ưu đãi về thuế của nhà nước, và cái đó là một cái hỗ trợ cực kỳ hữu ích. Tuy nhiên thì theo cá nhân tôi cho rằng là như thế vẫn là chưa đủ, bởi vì một công ty muốn sống được là họ phải được trang bị về rất nhiều thứ, trong đó gồm có là phát triển thị trường, trong đó bao gồm là về mặt quản trị doanh nghiệp. Thì hiện tại thì đâu đấy cũng thấy có những cái chương trình hỗ trợ từ phía chính phủ, tuy nhiên là nó chưa đủ hiệu quả.
These challenges are not insurmountable, but they require enterprises, especially those operating in industrial zones, to take proactive steps, investing in stronger financial and tax systems, optimizing project structures in line with the new law, embracing technological transformation, and enhancing governance capacity.
Right, now, so moving on, the law now channels incentives to industries such as semiconductors, AI-driven data centers, and auto parts localization. Now, Mr. Tuấn Bùi, from a legal and tax advisory view, what compliance requirements will investor need to prepare for in order to qualify for these new incentives?
For the new incentive, because it is, trying to attract the high value in investors. So of course, when the investor, they are seeking for the opportunity to invest in Vietnam, especially in the well-established industrial park like that, they should consult with the local legislation in terms of the qualification. For example, for high tech company. Of course, currently under the law on high tech now, they have certain qualification of what type of project may be qualified for being classified as high tech and subject to the tax incentive and a lot of other incentives that the government of Vietnam is providing. And so, if they qualify for that, then, they need to comply with the requirement in terms of documentations and dossier to apply for that with so-called high-tech certificate. And once they have that one, make a copy, sending to the tax authority and a cost, for the licensing authority, then automatically, they can apply the new incentive. And, for certain type of project, where the high-tech is given on the type of technology applicable to that project, Maybe at a certain point of time, maybe a few years later, in the investigation round, then the government authority may come back and check whether the company still keep developing or putting more R&D expense to continue developing that high technology to apply to make the products so that it continue to be qualifying as high tech class and continue enjoying the tax incentive.
Right, now turn over to you, Mr. John Campbell. If incentives are no longer tied to industrial park location, but rather to the nature of the projects, how might this influence demand for land in traditional IPs versus new high-tech clusters or specialized eco-industrial zones?
Yeah, it's a great question. I mean, as of now, we expect a two-speed market. Traditional industrial parks in core provinces will see strong demand from general manufacturers, especially those driven by the China plus one diversification. However, the high-tech clusters, eco-industrial zones, and high-tech parks, they will gain their relative attractiveness, especially when they often bundle infrastructure like stable power, green utilities. So this could lead to higher premiums in specialized industrial parks or specialized high-tech parks, whereas standard industrial parks will compete harder on cost and service.
Across the Asia-Pacific, Singapore imposes a corporate tax of only 17%, levies no capital gains tax, and grants strong exemptions for startups, making it a financial and technology hub. South Korea, with rates ranging from 10 to 25%, maintains its edge through powerful R&D incentives in semiconductors and ICT. France, despite its higher 25% tax, has turned into a magnet for AI, biotech, and clean energy projects thanks to a 30% R&D tax credit.
Vietnam is narrowing the gap. AI, digital tech, software R&D, data centers, it definitely makes Vietnam more appealing for high-tech investment, So some of the preferential rates, 10% for 15 years, long tax holidays, this is very much on par with what some of the competitors are offering for specific strategic sectors. So far, for companies with high R&D or expansion costs, Vietnam definitely becomes more cost effective.
With the 15% global minimum tax, Vietnam also steps onto a new playing field, no longer competing through ultra-low tax incentives, but through the quality of its investment environment, infrastructure, and workforce.
Vietnam has additional advantages compared to those countries, such as a cost-competitive workforce, the market size, political stability, which strengthens its position against other ASEAN countries. And I think generally, Vietnam has been undertaking the largest reform process recently, not only in relation to taxation of any ASEAN country. So I think the success depends on the execution, clear and transparent implementation, smooth transition for current investors, improvements in infrastructure skills and IP protection, which would help maximize the benefit of the tax reform.
And so in countries like Singapore, South Korea, or France have structured tax incentives to target only quality over quantity of investment. So what should Vietnam consider to ensure its new model truly drives technology transfer and innovation? I think before you said there is some stipulations when it comes when foreign companies come into Vietnam and make investments. So I'm sure these are already stipulated in the law, right?
Yeah, exactly. And it was initiated, as I mentioned earlier, under the Resolution 57 from the Political Bureau. Yeah, and then, a lot of legislation, law or, under law regulations already established, already issued last couple of years, aligning with that original resolution. And it covers a lot of, business sectors. And that's what we already learned from the already developed country, by attracting the high value creating investment.
I think the key lesson is clear, transparent, and stable rules. Singapore has successfully used tax incentives to anchor global tech companies by combining fiscal incentives with talent and infrastructure. South Korea pairs tax benefits with mandatory research and development and local supplier development. France ties incentives to sustainability and regional revitalization. So Vietnam should, ensure its incentives are not only generous but also predictable, with measurable requirements for technology transfer, workforce training, and ESG performance.
So we just mentioned a lot about how the new law is going to affect in a macro scale, in a very big scale. What about small SMEs who may not have the ability to turn over to as quickly as other bigger companies over to high-tech or green sectors? So how should Vietnam strike a balance between encouraging high-value FDI as well as supporting existing industries?
It's a valid concern. SMEs and mid-tier industries, they're the backbone of industrial parks currently. To balance the new model, Vietnam should continue offering reduced rates for smaller enterprises. For example, let's say the 15 to 17% CIT as written in the law. Also provide transitional support or sector-specific relief for labor-intensive industries, whether, furniture, electrical equipment, or textiles. And another point is encourage partnerships between traditional manufacturers and high-tech players to gradually move up the value chain.
In August 2025, foreign direct investment inflows into Vietnam continued to record positive momentum, with total FDI reaching $26.14 billion in the first 8 months of the year, up 27.3% compared to the same period last year. This demonstrates that Vietnam's business environment is becoming increasingly attractive, underpinned by policy stability and the quality of its workforce. Although newly registered capital declined by 8.1% year-on-year, the number of new projects increased by 12.6%, reflecting a shift in the investor structure. Small and medium-sized investors are expanding their presence, particularly in technology and innovation. Disbursed capital also hit a 5-year high of $15.4 billion, underscoring that foreign investors continue to commit and maintain steady capital deployment into the market. Vietnam's Corporate Income Tax Law 2025 will come into effect on October 1st, introducing sweeping reforms to move away from broad-based incentives towards more selective, strategic measures.
Vietnam's shift from relying on location-based incentives as a low-cost manufacturing hub to implementing innovation-based incentives is an important step towards becoming an innovation-driven economy. It aligns with international tax reform and also helps Vietnam be competitive while promoting sustainable growth.
Yeah. Right. And so looking ahead, what opportunities do you see for Vietnam to position itself as a competitive destination for next generation investment under this new tax policy?
Vietnam still hold a lot of advantages, compared to other countries in Southeast Asia. And with the new corporate income tax law, of course, one side we are trying to attract more the high-end value investment project, but we still maintain the existing incentive system to support the SME on smaller size, smaller scales of investment project. So it still creates a lot of opportunities for foreign investors to come into Vietnam to make the investment and support or contribute more to the growth of Vietnam economy.
Vietnam positions itself as a hub for semiconductors, green manufacturing, or digital infrastructure, industries that drive global capital flows today, basically. So the law strengthens Vietnam's branding as the next generation FDI destination. It does kind of reinforce that image that it's going for. Regarding the risks, policymakers must manage the transition very carefully. If incentives are too narrowly defined or implementation is unclear, smaller investors may hesitate or may be reluctant to come. There's also competition risk. Neighbors like Indonesia and Thailand also offer refreshing incentives. So for Vietnam, clarity, speed of approvals, and consistency in enforcement will be key to maximizing the opportunity.
Well, thank you so much, Mr. Tuấn Bùi and Mr. John Campbell, for coming over to our show and sharing your insights. We really appreciate it.